should be good. You've got your agenda showing. You'll have, and then down here, if you hover over that, it'll show the other documents that were in this packet. Okay?
All right.
All right. In case you need any wipes, there you go. I am in here if
Craig,
you really need something.
Thanks, Tina. Well, good morning, everybody. I think the task force is all present, and it's 10:02 a.m., so we're going to go ahead and get started. The one thing that I don't know, well, actually, maybe I do know, everyone should have a copy via email of the agenda, the minutes from July the 10th, and the minutes from July the 15th. Is that true? I think everyone has those because I sent them out. So our first order of business is to approve the minutes from July 10 and July 15. So if there are corrections or questions about the minutes, I'll open up the floor for that to start with. So does anybody have any questions or corrections as it relates to the July 10 or the July 15 minutes?
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
Janine moves that we approve the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Anthony seconds. All those in favor will say aye. Randy, I'll just take the people that are online one at a time as it relates to the minutes. Randy?
Yes.
Deidre?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yep.
Lloyd?
Yes.
Those in the room?
Aye.
Aye.
And yes, so the minutes are approved unanimously. The for those in the room with microphones, I think we found out last time that if we don't speak directly into the microphone, we can't be heard by the other participants. So just a reminder on that. So the next item on the agenda is updates on hiring an administrative assistant. So I can give an update on that. I believe Tina has published it in keeping with DOL regulations, and I had made a couple of calls to people that I thought might be good prospects for that position. Both of them considered applying, and then both said they didn't think they had margin. And then apparently Jonah was aware of someone that he thought would be a good prospect, and I noticed that this person has left me a message this morning, and I'll call her this afternoon. She expressed interest. I could just quickly listen to a piece of her voicemail. I'll call her this afternoon. I think she has some questions about what it might entail, and I'll answer her questions, and we'll see if she's interested in applying. Does anyone else have any leads for us that we could encourage to apply, or has anyone heard of anyone who has interest on that position? Okay, if not, then what I'd like to say is, for example, if the person who's got this message out to me is interested and it looks good, I'd like the freedom to say, hey, we're going to do a special quick meeting if it seems like someone that we'd like to try to hire that I'd like to pull together. And we'll do things like that virtually, like we did with the approval of the engagement letter with the accounting firm. And so if anyone has any concerns about that, please feel free to speak up. Otherwise, if there's a good candidate, if it feels like to me there's a good candidate, I'll probably try to pull us together on a quick virtual meeting for a decision on that, because we really need that person in place as quickly as we can.
No
Okay.
doubt about it.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we'll move to the next. Does anyone have any questions about the administrative assistant position or the processing that's happening so far, or any input feedback that we need to be considering? And just I guess for to put your mind at ease if you're wondering, is I'm taking some notes, and until we get that person, I'll produce minutes. So if you hear pauses in my movement of the agenda, it's because I'm writing down just enough that it'll trigger my memory on how to put together minutes. Okay, next item on the agenda is I wanted to talk a little bit about whether there are any, what I'm just going to call critical purchasing needs for the county's sake, whereas we might fast track the approval of certain things. And here's what brought that to my mind. Randy and I talked this week, and he mentioned that the emergency management department of the county would probably be submitting a request in all of this to fund a mobile lab, or that's probably not the way to put it, Randy. I'd like for you to describe what you described to me, and then I want to ask a few questions about that. Randy, would you mind doing that?
Sure. It's going to be an emergency command center that we'll use for this event. This vehicle will be taken, for example, let's say we have something that happened at a large facility, hospital, rest home, schools. We can bring the trailer there, do all the testing, and then we can quickly get the testing off to where it needs to go to, and that way folks don't have to drive, all over the place to get to it. We can bring the trailer and actually do the testing, or the nurses will do the testing, I won't. But that's what this is going to be used, and it'll also help us with the entire operations of what's going on here in running the logistics of this event. And that's what this trailer is going to do. It's a 30-foot trailer. We would take it and model it to where it would benefit us the best in order to do the COVID events and the disaster that we're working with.
Randy, do you have a rough cost on what you think that's going to be?
I think right now the one that I was looking at, because you have to do all the infrastructure, the wiring, and everything else inside of it, it's about $120,000. And that's just a quick look from this morning, looking at things. I haven't put out an RFP or anything for it.
Sure. So if there was approval given for that, from the time approval would be given, hypothetically, what's the lead time on like having it ready to use?
Without talking to vendors, I think it's about a 60-day turnaround in putting it together, what we're looking at.
Okay. That causes me to maybe shift my thinking on it a little bit, in that I thought, well, if this is a quick turnaround and we had good support for it, it might be something we would want to fast track in the process. But 60 days, I'm not sure that that's quick enough to help some of the major needs that are coming up. So for example, Tabor College is going to need to test from August 5th to August 25th. We're going to probably need to test 1,000 people. So that wouldn't really help us with that, even if we approved it today, because we'd need 60 days before it was ready. So I don't know that considering it for fast tracking, insofar as what my perspective was, is necessary.
And realize that's without talking to anyone with an RFP.
Sure.
And getting anyone's proposal.
I understand, and you'll probably bring more information to us, but yeah. So so from the things I was thinking about, I wouldn't have a lot more to say about that now. If Randy had said, hey, we can have it here in 2 weeks, I thought, well, that might provide some help. I don't know what the public schools needs are, Aaron.
That's what I was just about to ask. What, is there potential that you guys would need to use something like that?
I hope we don't. I think we're all probably in that boat. I don't know. Of course, the governor put we'll have an executive order coming down Monday, pushed us off till at a minimum September the 9th. So You know, I mean, I could see the use for it for the county, I mean, in case one of us would need it, but I haven't heard anybody say or talk about that they're gonna test everybody before they come back, if that makes sense.
That was the question I was wondering, Aaron. Tabor is going to do that. And so we might be the only
We've got
large
kids
entity.
from all over, ours are just coming from the county, so.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, I guess Randy's gonna be working on this and he's gonna propose it to the task force regardless. And so, Randy, I think you're getting affirmation that this could be something that would be an important thing to fund. So I would encourage you to continue to pull together the information. And I'll use that as a bridge to the next item on the agenda, which is to review the plan for requesting or for collecting funding requests. And so we had available to us during this week the email message that we would send to the various entities along with attachments that they'll need. The thing that we're going to have to do is to collect that data and then provide it to Swindoll, Jansen, Hawk, and Lloyd, assuming that the county commissioners execute that letter of engagement on Monday, which I believe that they will. And then as the accounting firm provides us with reports, we can begin to process, this is the way I'm seeing it, what we're going to include in our approved reimbursements and or potential for future funding. And that then has to be compiled into that larger report that would be submitted to the state. I'm assuming that Swindoll, Jansen, Hawk, and Lloyd, although I haven't talked to anyone there yet, I was waiting on Monday's county commission meeting to do so, will really give us a lot of help along those lines. My question for all of you is, have you begun to send those emails? If so, what's your sense so far? If not, do you feel like you're needing some more help with something, or do you have questions? So I'll open it up along those lines.
I'm
Hey,
sending them out.
Rusty,
Yes, Deidre?
I got an email from a long-term care facility with a question about, do they need to send a resolution because their board of director authorizes all major expenses that are more than $5,000.
Deidre, I kind of thought about that a little bit. And to me, I think that they need to do something that says that yes, they're going to follow the guidelines that are set out in that resolution. I don't think it matters whether it's a legal, a government entity or more of a nonprofit or private entity. I feel like if we're going to ask all the cities and government entities to do it, we need to ask those that are not public to do the same.
Okay, so does someone kind of have an example of that we could send out, or a canned response to that?
They have, at the meeting on Wednesday, they gave us a new form, which is a little simpler, so yes.
I sent a sample of what I was sent of a resolution to all of you. Are you saying, Janine, there's something that's even simpler than that could be sent? Because if there is, I haven't seen it.
Okay, and it was presented in the webinar on Wednesday. And so I'll send you that.
Okay.
And you can look it over and see if you think they thought it'd be simpler today.
Is that
on
making
Wednesday.
sense, Deidre, what Janine's saying?
Yes, I couldn't be on the Wednesday meeting, but that would be great, because then I can send it to we can send it out maybe to the facilities, and it will make more sense to them, hopefully.
Okay, so to summarize what I think I heard here is we've got at least one entity that's questioning whether they need to pass a resolution. The answer to that is yes. The resolution template that I had emailed earlier this week is a bit more, quote, if I could say it this way, complicated than some would probably really need to do. And
After the new one is like 2 pages, I believe.
And so Janine said that over the webinar this week, a simpler version of that has been made available, and she's going to email that to me, and then I'll provide that to all of you so that you can then, if you've already sent some emails, you can follow those up by saying, hey, here's a simpler approach to the resolution. And if you haven't sent those emails yet, replace the sample resolution that you have in your inbox with this one that is going to be forthcoming. That's my summary of where we're at. Does that sound about right to everybody?
Rusty, I'd have a question on that.
Go for it, Randy.
My question is this, that since I'm doing emergency services, all the emergency services either belong to the county department, to the county, or to a city, to include the county fire districts. They all fall under the county. So wouldn't they fall under the city and the county's resolution? Because those are the folks I'm dealing with.
Anthony, you have a thought on that?
Yeah, so like obviously police are gonna fall under the city, and all the cities will be required to have signed a resolution. Fire districts, you know, and Randy, you tell me if I'm wrong, but the county does not directly manage, you know, the fire district. So I would believe that the county, you know, would want them to also do a resolution of some sort. But you
They
tell
don't
me,
directly,
you
they
tell me
do
if I'm
fund them
wrong.
annually.
What was that?
They don't directly manage them, but they do fund them annually. They give them money every year
Yeah.
to fund them.
You know, Randy, my thinking on this whole thing requiring the resolution has always been that it kind of somewhat protects the county, and that the county is saying, hey, we're giving you this money, we have requirements and regulations we have to meet, we expect the same of you. And so, you know, if the county feels safe as far as just giving the money to the fire districts without a resolution, then that's fine.
I would think they'd want a resolution from
But
everyone.
I know that, you know, the county may give them money, but at the end of the day, the fire district decides how that money is spent.
So Rusty, what's the consensus on, because I have a couple of thoughts on this, and I think since they do belong to the county, quasi to the county, that the county's writing it, and if we go with the fire districts as he's speaking, some fire districts cover 3 or 4 townships, so now do I have to drag 3 or 4 townships in to write a separate resolution? This is becoming very muddy.
Now, Randy, the fire districts here in Marion County, are they, in my experience, not here in Marion County, but previously, fire districts have their own board. Is that not how the fire districts here in Marion County are set up?
They do have a board, but they are overseen by the townships. That's who they serve. The townships, like the county, pays into them.
To me, this is a county commissioner decision.
Yeah, I mean, and I think our discussion, when we had this discussion about the resolution, was that they would require that. Now, whether or not they would want that for the fire districts, you know, Randy, you know the commissioners probably better than I do, and if you feel like they would be okay without it, then I don't have a problem.
Do you think maybe that should be a question for the auditor or even Brad, the counselor? I mean, I'm just saying, if there's some fund issues or something, I would think the county might want to be protected, kind of leaning toward what Anthony has said, but I'm, you know, would Scott or Brad be able to answer that?
That's probably a good place to go. You know, and I do want to remind everybody, I am not saying that the state has required this, because I do not believe the state has. They've only required that the county does the resolution. My thinking has been that, you know, if something doesn't go quite right, we can say, hey, you signed this resolution that said you're going to use this money in this way, and that kind of protect the county. That's been my thinking this entire time. So, yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea to ask the accounting firm or Brad what he thinks we should do in that regards.
Let me propose a way forward here. Listening to what different ones of you have said, I would propose that I ask Jonah to put this on Monday's County Commission agenda with some of the suggestions that the County Commission decide whether they want to get, consult with some of the partners that they have in place. That can be their decision, but ultimately we're going to need a decision on this. Randy, I would encourage you to maybe let Jonah know kind of the nuances here that you're talking about, so that he has a little bit of that in his head, so to speak. In the meantime, to the extent that a particular entity, let's just say, for example's sake, the fire districts are just wondering, does this really make sense? That does not prevent them from going ahead and doing the heavy lifting of deciding what they're going to request for reimbursement and actually getting that in our hands. We can, a couple weeks from now, retroactively say, okay, now we can consider these as legitimate requests because we either did or didn't ultimately require a resolution from their organization. I would think that coming out of the County Commissioners meeting Monday, we'd have more direction if we approach it this way. Would the task force support that as an approach for kind of bringing some resolution to these nuances? I'll take the silence as supportive. Okay?
Thank you.
Great. Let's come back to...
Rusty, I got a question concerning this. Can you hear me okay?
Is this Lloyd?
Yeah, it's Lloyd.
Go
Sorry.
for it, Lloyd.
Are we compiling any type of a comprehensive list of these who we're contacting? I mean, I haven't been, but getting the word out. I know we had talked about, and this may be something for the administrative assistant. I know we talked about getting that in the paper about the Spark funding availability, but between everybody on the committee and how things are getting out, is there a comprehensive list like, hey, these folks have been contacted, I've emailed them? I mean, are we doing anything like that so we don't leave any holes or obvious ones when we get further down the road going, oh wait, somebody should have been talked to?
Yeah,
or are we just going to depend on our advertising?
I think that is actually the key question here, and so my understanding of how we're approaching this as of now, and keep in mind that's without an administrative assistant in place. We might be able to shore some of this up in a different way once we have that person in place, but here's my understanding of how each of us are individually to be handling this now, is that from Randy's organizational chart that he provided, and I think I attached that to make sure everyone had it, he indicates general areas that each person is giving coverage to, and you would do your own research and collect your own list of contacts and email addresses and then send them emails, and then you would have them, you would be the clearinghouse for those organizations that you're reaching out to, and then you would create, a storehouse of information that you're getting back. You would provide it to us, and then per my agenda outline, albeit very rudimentary, we would then provide that to Swindoll, Jansen, Hawk, and Lloyd, and that they would begin to compile it in more detail and putting a fine point on it, as it were. Then for those organizations, entities that we may have missed in that process, we do have ourselves covered. Even in that, we're making a public statement that if you'd like to be considered here, then reach out to, and there will be contact information in that public advertisement. Janine, did you have something to add to that?
I would kind of like to see this stuff going also, since I'm responsible for the finance part of it, so I would like to at least be included in the stuff that's sent to Swindle, Johnson, Hawk and Lloyd, so.
Absolutely.
Does
So-
that make sense?
Yeah, so maybe, I wonder, Janine, would it make sense insofar as the task force is concerned that you, as an individual, become the clearinghouse for what we're collecting? And maybe then you can work pretty directly from a, from a financial point of view and the details of that with somebody from Swindoll, Jansen, Hawk and Lloyd.
That makes sense.
I think that would be a good structure for us. So
Okay.
I think we all need to have, for sure, access to the information so that we can be looking at it, because at some point we're going to have to make decisions. But Janine offering to be that sort of clearinghouse and liaison for those financial details between the accounting firm and the task force makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's the way we should go. Is there agreement on that piece, or are there questions about what we're saying there on that with Janine and the accounting firm?
Well, my question was, is this just information from the people that are responding, or are we going to maintain some sort of a list of who we're actually contacting?
Well, I would assume that each individual will keep their own list so that we'll know who we've contacted, and we can compile that once we have an administrative assistant in place.
I just started thinking about some of this overlap where you've got county and then you've got money going to fire districts and all that as well. The county.
Yeah, so maybe at our next meeting, come prepared, or even send an email ahead of that meeting with the list that you've contacted. And then from there, hopefully we have somebody in place by then and we can begin to compile all this. And if a little bit of overlap happens there, we may have to live with that, given the fact that we don't have the administrative support to make sure that that kind of overlap doesn't happen yet. I would rather have overlap than leave somebody out.
Before we move on, I just had one other question with the resolution. I think I heard someone mention there was a shorter version of this resolution. If that's true, if that's what I heard, could we please send that out to the committee so we can all take a look at it?
Okay, I'll send it out right away.
Thank you.
And then I think if you've already sent emails to organizations inviting them, then follow up with another email saying, hey, here's maybe a more reasonable version of the resolution for your organization to consider. And if you haven't sent those emails yet, then replace the copy of the sample resolution I sent earlier in the week with this one that Janine's going to provide us with. And it was provided during the state webinar this week as an option of something that's maybe simpler to execute for these organizations.
And there's an updated spreadsheet too. I haven't looked at that to see how different that is.
And are you talking about, Janine, an updated spreadsheet for reporting with?
Mm-hmm. I'll just send all those things.
Okay, that'd be great. I'm going to assume that those kinds of updates ultimately will be ensured by our accounting firm that I believe we will engage with after Monday.
That'll be helpful because the Fire Association meets tonight and law enforcement's next week, so I'll get it down to them as quick as possible.
Okay, thank you. Okay, one final question on this topic that I have is, do we think that by this time next week that we could make sure that all of us are committed to sending out the email to each of the organizations that are within our scope of responsibility, inviting them to start submitting their reimbursement or future expense requests?
I just want a little clarification. With this, what we need by August 15th, I think is the date, we're looking at the public entities, right?
Well, I think
Or are we needing to include also private, non-public entities by that date too?
Well, at this point, I think there's some confusion about that, and I'm working to eliminate the confusion. So at this point, it's just public.
Okay.
But that may turn into public and private. Well, it will for sure at some point.
Right.
It's just I'm not sure when that happens yet.
Yeah.
But I'm waiting, and again, I'm waiting until Monday, and then I'm going to talk directly with the accounting firm because I think they're going to have expertise on this.
Okay. I'm just a little bit, I need that clarified because
Yeah.
that changes things. I've
It
contacted
does.
everybody on my list that's a public entity. But
Right.
when you add in the private entities, that's going to be a lot.
Well, so my thought is this on that, Anthony.
And Randy, Randy and I have already talked. He'll help me out with making sure that we get them all. But
Yeah. And so my thought is that for sure the public entities we know right now are eligible to start submitting requests. We know that for sure.
Okay.
When we determine when public or private entities can do that, and of course I'll be honest, I have a special interest in that because I represent a college as well, then I think we're going to have a parallel strategy for that. And it may not look quite like this public entity strategy looked. I don't know. The task force will have to brainstorm that and kind of come up with a plan. But I'll bring that information for sure by the next meeting. I may email it to everybody before a week from today, depending on when I can connect with Scott Lloyd or whoever at the Swindoll, Jensen, Hawken Lloyd they tell me is the right person for me to be talking to.
They're all good and efficient.
Okay, good. Very good. That's a great question. Thanks, Anthony. I'm going to take a couple notes here. Give me a second.
At some point in time, I think we're gonna have to, we won't have exact numbers, we're gonna have to figure out the levels of what we're gonna, like 20%, 30%, we'll have to think about that.
Yeah, I think what I hear you saying, Janine, is we'll likely have more requests than we have money to go around, and then we're going to have to, and I actually think that's our biggest charge.
We need to be fair.
Yeah, everything else is kind of nuts and bolts, but that at the end of the day is what's really going to make the biggest difference in the county. And so we're going to have to try to put on our county lens and say, how can we help the county as much as possible with these decisions? It won't be easy, but when you're selected for leadership, things are usually not easy.
We'll have to remember that rounds 2 and 3 will be directly administered by the state, and I think they will be more for private, but then there's a bigger pool.
Yeah.
Making yourself heard is going to be harder.
Yeah. And I'm going to be, that what you just said is something I'm really determined to, insofar as I need to give some knowledge to the task force. I'm going to try to really educate myself on that. But again, I'm waiting until after Monday's decision from the county commissioners to start that really full-fledged.
We appreciate you.
Hey, Rusty, I know you're not the administrative assistant, but I was just wondering if anyone's watching the chat line on our conference here. Because as we have conversations, we're putting information in there. I just wanted to let you know that there have been some comments made. I just didn't want you to miss out on those.
Okay.
Sorry, I wasn't even logged in. Thank you. Can you help us there?
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're not in front of. You're right, Jim.
I'm sorry, Randy. I'm not very good at running this, so any help I can get is wonderful.
No, that's fine. I just didn't know if you guys had it on your screen because I can't see your screen.
Okay, now I see it. So, Deidre, I'm going to refer to you in just a minute here. Randy says that all of his departments have been contacted. It sounded like Anthony was saying the same thing. Maybe we'll, if others want to share where they're at with that on the chat, that would be great. In the meantime, Deidre, I think now would be a great time for you to speak about testing equipment a bit.
Well, I just wanted to mention that if anyone that you know of has been working on testing equipment, I think that should be a critical purchasing to be considered. I I mean, if anybody like the hospitals or, you know, I know Tabor's looking at purchasing something, if we could use it at the county level also somehow, I think that needs to be really looked at. How can we get test results back quicker within the county? If someone's willing to be a CLIA Wade lab or one of our hospital labs, because I foresee as the cases rise, we're gonna possibly have clusters and need results quickly. I know the lab like Quest and LabCorp is really backed up right now. So we are sending stuff to KDHE lab, but I just know I'm doing some checking into what Tabor is purchasing, but I'm wondering if that could be considered if, like, say we have different entities where we see a cluster or facilities and we need to test a group of people. I don't know if it'd be a possibility if Tabor's approved to purchase a equipment, then if we could use that for our clusters. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that.
Yeah, it makes real good sense, Deidre. So this is a chance for me to maybe give everyone some insight into all of that. First, I'll just say I'm no expert on testing equipment, but I have learned way more about it than I ever thought I would in my life. There are multiple different approaches to testing right now. There's a Pcr Antigen Test, which currently that's the one that you put a swab, what everybody likes to say is next to your brain, and then you send it off to a KDHE approved CLIA lab. You have to wait at least 2 days for a result. I'm in the ballpark on there. Deidre, you can correct me if I'm way off on any of this. Then there is now what they call, so that's an antigen test. There's what they call a rapid antigen test. There's a Sophia analyzer that allows you to process 30 to 50 tests per hour. The collection of that sample is done just in the nasal cavity, just with a swab just right inside the nasal cavity. It's quick. The accuracy of that one on a negative test is being questioned. My understanding is that as the data becomes more robust, the accuracy of that for a negative test is actually rivaling that of a PCR test. The accuracy for a positive test, antigen test, whether it's PCR or a rapid test, are both very strong, upper 90% for positive tests. Now there also is a rapid molecular test. Again, the Sophia company has made an analyzer. They can do one of those every 15 minutes. So here's what I know so far about purchasing of all of that equipment and the test kits that go along with it. The hospital is purchasing 2 molecular Sophia machines, analyzing machines. Again, those machines very accurate both for positive and negative, and those machines can process a test every 15 minutes. The hospital and Tabor College are partnering. Hopefully, I get word this afternoon whether this can happen, but right now I'm praying and believing for it, that we will partner with them to purchase a rapid antigen analyzer and all the necessary test kits to go along with it. That's pretty expensive. That could run into the tens of thousands of dollars. And then we're going to try to set up a CLIA lab on our campus, and we would love to partner with the entire county to make all of this available as needed. So I could see the county health department, the emergency services department, the hospitals, and the schools and Tabor College all saying, okay, we have this available. Tabor is definitely going to use the heck out of it, and we're required to by our athletic association. So all of our athletes will be tested multiple times in the fall semester. So you can see why we needed to be able to run 30 to 50 tests per hour. So if the task force would be able to see its way clear to say, you know what, all of that's expensive and that is a fast-tracked thing. I could provide next Friday the exact numbers on that. I'll give you just a rough count right now. I think it's gonna be in the somewhere between $50,000 and $150,000. I know that's a broad spread, but the reason the spread's so broad is because I have to do a little more thinking about how many test kits we'll need. That's where the range of dollars comes from, is I'd have to think, I can get pretty close to how many test kits Tabor will need, but I have to think a little bit more about the schools, the county at large, the public schools I meant to say, the county at large. So yeah, Deidre, is that helpful?
Yeah, that is helpful. And if you could get those numbers, I think that would be great. And I can try and get some numbers for you, just kind of an estimate so we could see about how many county tests we'd run. My other question is, do you have someone like a staff person that's going to collect those tests?
Good. Thank you, Deidre. We're hoping that between the hospitals and the health department, and I've talked to Mark Rooker about this here in Hillsborough, that they're going to help staff this, because they'll be the ones that bill the insurance companies then. We're wiping our hands of the insurance billing on this. And so then that's where, like Hillsborough Hospital, let's say, that's where they could then, create the profit for their company that's needed as a part of running their business. That's where they could create some profit, is by doing the insurance billing. And we're glad to allow that to happen, at least at Tabor we are, because handling the billing is a bit of a challenge. We were going to just say, well, we're just not going to worry about that. We aren't going to bill any insurance companies. We're just, we were always hoping that this task force would consider that a cost that they might approve. But now that we can look at it maybe in a broader partnership, maybe that increases the odds that the task force would say, hey, absolutely. And then what I hear you saying, Deidre, is this may be something we might want to consider fast tracking a bit, because we don't know how this is all going to play out. We're going to test at Tabor College, we will test every employee and every student before school starts.
And as far as the county, I guess I'm kind of looking for testing for a population where that billing doesn't have to necessarily occur, or if it does occur, it's at a reduced, because, well, I'm sure everybody's read the paper, but if it's in a facility and we see that we have to charge a number of people, oftentimes they don't have a physician. So yeah, we can have our medical consultant write the order, but then it's a struggle finding someone willing to do the testing, because they have to go through so many channels to get it paid for and to do the billing, like you mentioned. So if this money could support have a cash or something that they could do so many tests, and then we wouldn't have to go through that billing. Yeah. I don't know. I will try to work on something.
Yeah, Deidre, what I hear you saying is, given your perspective, there could be a bit of a need for a both-and approach to billing. In some cases, it might work fine to bill insurance companies. In other cases, that's just not going to work, and so we would approach this as we're not going to try to recover any funding in some cases.
Right.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Deidre.
I don't know why we couldn't set up a fund some way. We'll have to go through, but we could. We can request approval to see if something would match funding, and I can't find that form right now.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll definitely, from my side, I'll definitely bring numbers to our next meeting of what it looks like to me some of the costs involved with that would be. And Deidre, if you want to do that as well, and we can see what the task force thinks about that next week.
Yeah, I can do that.
Aaron, I'm just curious, has the high school association said anything about sports, about testing or anything?
They have not. They were supposed to come out with an announcement today, but with the governor's executive order, they've decided to wait.
Okay, just wondering if this would fit in with what you might need as well.
Yeah, I don't know that yet. I know I've seen some things that some other school districts have put together for Spark funding. I know some of our neighbors had to have their stuff in last week. So one thing I think I would recommend to folks is when you're putting your stuff together, maybe you put them in tiers, as in priority level, because there's going to be a lot of stuff that will overlap. And I don't know how much. I know several of you trying to order stuff and get stuff here. The longer we wait to order stuff, the less likely we are to get it very quickly. So it might just be when you're visiting and emailing your folks, try to, prioritize what you think you need for your entity and kind of go from there. And then it's going to take somebody, I don't know if it's going to come from our group or what, because a lot of the different groups are probably going to order a lot of the same stuff.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say encourage everybody to do their ordering, because like Aaron said, as cases go up and as cases go up in the United States, PPE is going to be limited, and the cleaning solutions, again, will probably see limited supplies. Hopefully not with toilet paper, but.
Or coins?
I'm making a couple of notes here. The last item on the agenda, I thought I might have more information to share, and that actually came up already during this discussion, and so I don't. I'm going to carry that forward to next week per what I said earlier. I don't have any other agenda items for today. Thinking ahead, to summarize kind of what I've heard here so far, is our next meeting date will be a week from today, 10 o'clock again, in person or via GoToMeeting link is all great. If we, between now and then, have an opportunity to hire an administrative assistant, I'll probably try to fast track that with the task force, so keep that in mind. And my administrative assistant, Miriam, as you all heard from this week, will try to schedule a virtual meeting for us. We won't have an in-person option for that one. And if you have agenda items as we approach each of these meetings, please email them to me and I'll see to it that they get onto the agenda. Otherwise, I keep a notebook where I'm trying to stay abreast of everything that's going on, and I'm just creating an agenda as the week goes, like the one that I sent out, and then I will I'll try to by Thursdays at noon, I'll try to by email provide the agenda and the minutes from the prior meeting or meetings to everyone. Is there anything else that any of you would like to take care of before we adjourn? Hearing none, I just want to say I appreciate working with all of you. It's just always, it's just always encouraging to see how many professionals, how many competent, committed, passionate people there are in our Marion County. It's a great place to live, and it's a hard time, but we've got a chance to really make a difference here. So I just encourage us all to keep up the good work and have a great weekend. All right, bye everybody.
Great, thanks.
How do I turn off the recording?
Down one more.
There we go. Thank you.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
I'm not sure how to turn that one
Does anybody know, does the health department, have they collected a lot of PPE that is in stock right now?
Yes, between Randy and Deidre, I think there's quite a lot in stock.
Based on what Aaron said, you know, there at the end, I'm thinking to myself, I hope that we've stockpiled a bit insofar as we've been able to. I don't know if a bunch of it will be needed. I know we're gonna need quite a bit. I know that for sure, regardless of how many cases there are or aren't.
Have you guys ordered quite a bit?
We've gotten a lot from them already, and we've ordered a bunch ourselves too. I mean, just the basic things like disinfectant spray, and sanitary wipes, hand sanitizer.
And that, at one point in time, was terribly hard to find, so.
We made our own. That's how hard it was to find. We literally produced our own, bought the chemicals necessary and produced our own. We worked with Container Services to get dispensers and things.
All right.
Okay, have a great weekend,
sir.
everybody. Yep.
Oh, that's
I'm out of here all next week. So.
All right.
Will you, there's
Stop
three
the
of us here,
recording.
basically, right? Will
that
you
one.
continue to come in person? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I thought if I'm gonna be the only one.
No, I'll continue to come,
Okay.
and, you know, as long as something
You
comes
just
up, as long as
close
I'm
the
able to be
thing
over
that
here,
should work on
I'll
the camera.
really like
Just
the
close the-
in-person
Me too.
deal,
Oh,
so.
okay.
Me too.
But
See you guys.
I didn't
Bye.
write down.
Thanks for your